Welcome, guys. I'm here doing the first TLLZ interview or slash conversation. I'm here with internet comedian James Russell. Like, is that what you would call yourself?
More or less, yeah. Just kind of the internet weirdo of political comedy.
Yeah. Anyway, so me and James have talked back and forth quite a bit over the last 3 years, I'd say.
Yeah, it's probably been about that long. Since 16 at least.
Yeah. Or maybe not 2016. I think it was, Trump was already president, I think.
Was he? Oh, okay.
I think because we first started interacting over Instagram, I think. And yeah, I got an Instagram spring of 2017.
Okay, yeah, that must have been it.
All right. But I will say it is a pleasure to finally meet you.
Yeah, totally, brother.
All right. I don't know. So since we brought up Trump, let's talk about him.
All right, let's dive right into this shitstorm. Head first.
All right. So I think this was just today. I know Bob Woodward has a new book on Trump. I mean, he had one a couple years ago called Fear.
Yep.
And then what's the name of this one? Do you know?
Rage, I think. I think that's what it's called because it's what everyone is feeling reading it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's it was an audio clip that was released or something like that in which Trump admitted that he always wanted to play the COVID crisis down.
Yeah. I mean, it's been reported since about, there was an NPR article that reported around April or maybe, it must have been about April or May. It was internal notes that he intentionally was trying to downplay it because he was worried it would hurt his re-election chances. And hey, he turned out so right because his election chances are so great right now by downplaying it. So I mean, this has been known for a while, but Bob Woodward just came out with he had them receipts,
Yeah, and rumors of this kind of go back to his Tulsa rally. I think it was his Tulsa rally in which he openly admitted, he told health officials and stuff like that, so let's slow down testing. This will look bad.
Yep. And he degraded them for trying to enforce mandates and stuff.
Yeah, and it's and that's really gets to the heart of why he was exactly the wrong person for this crisis specifically, because he views everything as a marketing problem. If there's one thing he's good at, it is marketing and reading the room. Because we can argue about how successful his businesses have been, but he's made money aside from the stuff that you
marketing or branding though, because I mean the marketing. I see branding for sure. I don't know about the marketing as much. Would you say that, or is it still think it's more marketing?
I don't know. Maybe both, because I think if you look back to his 2016 run, he was able to successfully market himself as an outsider because he was new to the political scene. He doesn't have a voting record a mile long like Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders or any person who's been in there for the last 50 years. So he was able to have that outside appeal, and he was reneging against the establishment, at least in rhetoric.
Someone from the Beltway.
And that's what, and it was that kind of rhetoric that allowed him to win the Rust Belt, which is what gave him the election. And those areas typically do go blue, but a lot of progressive voters just decided to stay home because they felt like Hillary Clinton, I guess, was just way too much the establishment. And I don't blame them for thinking that.
And don't forget that those were the states that Russia targeted the most, especially in terms of suppressing the African American turnout. And it had a big, you look at the numbers of exit polls and people that stayed home, it had a big impact.
Yeah, and on top of that, Hillary Clinton didn't bother to go to Michigan and Wisconsin, and that definitely had an effect. Hillary Clinton was just not a great campaigner. You can agree or disagree with her policies all you want. I mean, it's kind of an objective thing. She wasn't really good at running a campaign.
I know. I remember even because obviously that's a big thing, a big factor of why she lost. And researched it just because I wanted to make sure it was accurate. And I'm researching it. Yeah, she was barely there. Like, what the fuck were you thinking? I remember she abandoned Ohio in around July, I think. But then, like, Michigan, Wisconsin, just, like, didn't even go. What in the fuck are you thinking? That's,
I don't know why she would abandon Ohio, because I think it's,
I know.
Like, I don't know for how long it's like whoever won Ohio won the election. I don't know for how long that has been the case.
Yeah, and that was when I first read about that news, oh boy, this is a big mistake. I mean, I still get so furious about reading so many of the errors that they made. It's like so blatant.
And, you know, and then if you look at like the state of the race now, even though like Joe Biden, as far as national polling, isn't too far from where Hillary Clinton was, if you get down to like the states where it matters, he is doing a lot better. You know, like I think even last I checked, he's like there was like some polling average that had Joe Biden 0.02% above Trump in Texas. In fucking Texas.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And also there's like, he looks like he could do pretty decently in Florida, and then you have like, you know, on top of that you have California and New York. Those 4 states are like the biggest states as far as like the electoral college goes, as far as like the number of electoral votes. Like if you can win those 4 states, then, and like, you know, and then also in addition the Rust Belt, I think the Rust Belt is ultimately what's going to decide this election.
Yeah, Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, those states are going to play a very, very big role.
And then there's another thing I saw. One of my favorite political commentators. His name is Kyle Kulinski, and he did a segment last week, I think it was, and I was planning on maybe discussing this with like in the regular podcast, but then like we decided to take the week off because classes, like we're all starting school, and we're trying to get to the swing of things. Then we're going to figure out what we're going to do with the show. You know, as far as like scheduling and things like that. But there is someone who is saying that because of absentee voting, and like we've seen this with primary contests, because of absentee voting, it's going to take a whole lot longer to count the votes.
Yeah.
And also take into account that the people who are more likely to vote absentee are Joe Biden voters, because they have much more faith in that way of voting.
Yeah.
So because of that, it is going to look like that Trump may have like slaughtered Joe Biden on election night. But then, you know, it's probably going to be like a week maybe before the votes are finished counting.
Yeah.
Or they finish counting the votes. Yeah,
that's going to be one of the big things to watch. Samantha Bee had a really funny segment that I watched yesterday. It was in regards to this person who did like a kind of a war game simulation of all the different scenarios on election night. Like Biden wins by a landslide, Trump wins by a landslide, by a little, by a lot, by a small bit, either by they can't decide. Whatever the outcome is, it's going to be chaos. So just be prepared for shit to hit the fan. And the important thing is to get your ass out in the streets and march and make sure the counts are verified and accurate. That's going to be the best thing that anybody can do.
Yeah. What I was thinking of is like the scenario in which like Trump would look like he beats Biden, and then, like by a landslide.
Bless you.
Biden, bless you, Colin. He said bless you. So like it's a scenario in which like Trump would look like on election night that he is slaughtering Biden, because it's only like the in-person votes that are counted first, and then the absentee votes come in over the week. And then, you know, what do you think like Trump supporters, especially like the really conspiratorial ones, are going to think when they see Trump winning on election night and then they see Biden slowly creeping up and then eventually maybe like winning?
He got robbed. It's a conspiracy. Yeah. Get out and get Jerry, get the truck ready. Like that's oh shit, I was so into my improv, I knocked the camera down, pointed at my crotch. But that's
that is what's going to happen. I think if that is if that's what's going to happen with the votes, and you know, and more than likely that probably will happen with the votes. And
they're going to be out in the street, man. So that's why it's so important that we are as well. And I'm not so certain about the in-person voting. I don't know if it's going to be a slaughter because from what I'm reading from organizers, and, I'm doing a few organizations, whatever. I'm doing a few organizing things myself, and there is a very concerted push to, if you don't want to vote in person, because you're afraid of the virus, bring your absentee ballot and you can drop it off there. So there's a big push towards that. So fingers crossed, it won't look as big as they're saying. So, I mean, no matter what, the Trumpers are gonna go conspiracy crazy shit, but hopefully we can tamp some of that down.
Yeah. And, I don't know. Like, I hope, obviously I hope Biden wins, but also on that note, like when Biden does win, we also have to make sure we don't just stay home saying, okay, our guy won, let's go back to brunch. We need 100%.
Let's go back to brunch, 100%.
Yeah. So like because Biden is conservative even for like an American Democrat, and the Democrats are supposed to be like considered like this progressive party. So like, we need to make sure we keep his ass in line as well. When,
100.
like, come January.
Yeah, that's 100% right. Because, you and I were big Bernie fans. We're not going to get Medicare for all, but we're still going to get universal coverage with 97% of the country covered. That's fucking huge, right?
Yeah.
So that is a big thing. So we need to make sure that gets implemented. And if they fail on that, well, fuck you. Then you need to Medicare for all and $15 minimum wage. That's what he promised. $2 trillion Green New Deal. Like redoing the Voting Rights Act, so we stop the voter suppression of African Americans in this country. It's a very ambitious platform, and you're absolutely right. We need to be ready to hold his feet to the fire, and in the first 100 days, a lot of that shit's got to be done.
Yeah, and like as far as like the 97% of coverage, that I guess compared to now, that's good. It's just like I'm still worried about that 3%. Like if it was just like just numbers, and it's like, oh, it's only 3%. I guess it's easy to like fall into that, but like that's how much is like 3% of Americans, like 90 million, so roughly like 300 million, right?
366 million, so it's roughly 3.5 to 4 million people. So you're right, it's a lot, but it's a hell of a big step forward considering that there's still, I guess I haven't read the latest figures, but there's still got to be at least nearly 50 million uninsured. I'm pulling that out my ass, so forgive me, but it's got to be a pretty high number, like an unacceptable number for sure.
Yeah, and like this was interesting because like there was a time like back in like I think it was like mid-July in which Biden started releasing a lot of policies that actually was like, yeah, like I actually can get on board with this. Because like I think it was the Sunrise Movement who they endorsed Bernie. They are big supporters of the Green New Deal. They've endorsed progressive primary candidates across the country. They said that there are parts of Biden's climate plan that are better than Bernie's 2016 climate plan.
Really?
Oh. Yeah, and and his plan, I think it definitely doesn't go nearly as far enough, but it definitely is. It's better than like the active damage that Trump is doing.
Yeah.
Like the Paris Climate Accords, like those didn't go nearly as far enough as they should have.
Yeah.
But like we do need to get back into the Paris Climate Accords.
Absolutely.
Other things. That is just like a small step that we need to do. And like the Green New Deal, like aside from like helping save the environment, but like all the patents and jobs that come out of that. Like it's expensive, but with all of that, like it isn't like it's essentially just going to pay for itself because of like, the number of things that it also does for the economy.
Yeah, and it's going to put so many people to work. A lot of folks, like I've been in hotels for a long time, and hotels, a lot of people that I know, the industry isn't expected to recover until potentially 2022, where it could get back to full operations. And in that interim, you could have a lot of folks get retrained to work in the climate industry, especially out here in California. There's solar energy jobs that would be available, wind power energy jobs. There's even crazy ass ideas of making like a giant sea turbine, right? The turbine would spin with the tidal waves, and that would produce electricity that way. That could put a shitload of people to work. And there's going to be a lot of people between, when Biden wins until we really crush the coronavirus that are going to need work. And that climate plan can really play a big impact.
Yeah. And then, you know, I do. Shit, I was going to say something I forgot, but
Was it about the climate deal or something else?
it was relating to climate deal. Oh yeah. So when I was thinking more about, like, you know, how we move, like, you know, how we implement, like, those kind of jobs. I mean, like, I really think our focus needs to be on the coal country, you know, because, like, you know, those industries definitely need to be gotten rid of, like, eventually. I mean, I think that's necessary, but, you know, we do need to replace those jobs with, you know, with those, with, you know, with green energy jobs. I think is the best way to do it. But yeah, we could definitely use these jobs all over the place to really help. But, like, I think, yeah, priority number one as far as jobs with this Green New Deal, I think, is coal country, and and I've seen, like, you know, what coal country looks like up close. I mean, like, I travel through there.
Area, right?
Now I do. I live in Blacksburg. That's close to Southwest Virginia. Before I was in Central Virginia, but I've traveled through the area a number of times, you know, to visit family in Tennessee. And then, you know, like, it definitely isn't pretty. And you know, the coal industry is a dying industry. It's not really going to be saved. I mean, it shouldn't be saved. And
I got to jump in on that because it's so funny how you're right. It's a dying industry. They continuously, you know, I think Trump had a bunch of prop ups and not necessarily bailouts, but kind of handouts to keep them afloat. And it's so funny they're willing to do that for private businesses, but not for the U.S. Postal Service, which is in the fucking Constitution.
Yeah.
Kind of a contradiction there. But yeah, you're right. With the coal country, it's such that industry is such a horrible impact on the environment. And it's dying naturally because of the transition off of these older fuels onto more clean energy that are simply more efficient and less expensive to produce, hence Green New Deal, right? And there has to be, because a lot of those jobs are unionized, and we need to make sure we're taking care of the union. So there has to be a transition plan and a path to success for those union workers and for the unions to transition and keep their bargaining contracts into these new Green New Deal industries.
Yeah. And like, as far as the coal industry itself, like, the most you can do for the coal industry is to just, like, you know, slow its death pretty much. You cannot bring those jobs back. You can, like, maybe at the most, like, stop those jobs from going, but even that's, like, a stretch.
Yeah.
But yeah, and also a lot of it you know, has to do with, like, the marketing of it as well, because, you know, Hillary Clinton made the big mistake of saying, like, we got to get rid of coal, and, like, just kind of leaving it at that. Joe Biden kind of fell into that trap too in one of the debates when they were asking him, was like, okay, like, if we had the Green New Deal, or, like, all these, like, we like, do all these different, like, climate change things. I don't know, like, what plan they're referring to specifically. They're, like, saying, like, oh, if we take care of climate, do you think it's worth all losing, like, the coal industry and all those things? And he was like, yes, absolutely. And Bernie came in later and said, I think your question misses the mark, you know, like, because, like, these jobs would be replaced with these jobs.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I love so much about Bernie's, when he answers a question, he frames it correctly, is that, no, it's not about killing off these industries. It is about finding a home for these workers that have, throughout history, made America where we are now. Like, coal was a huge factor in how we were able to power our industry for a very long time, and we need to reward those folks and make sure there's a place for them to go. And that's why I love the way Bernie phrases those questions. And yeah, Hillary and the Democrats in general, every time they talk about this, I just want to throttle them like Homer and Bart, like, that's not how you answer that question. Why, you little? Yeah. And I just wish they would focus more on the workers. That is the issue, not the industry.
Yeah. And then Biden also kind of fell into another, like, and, like, that's the thing that I really can't stand. That's one of the many things I really can't stand about, like, you know, Democrats in general, is how they're so eager to, like, give in to the right-wing framing of certain issues. You know,
Yeah.
it's like Joe Biden did that the other day. He was in Kenosha, where Jacob Blake was shot, and then Kyle Rittenhouse later killed a couple people. He was giving a speech, and he was basically giving into the accusation that Trump made against him, like, oh, he's soft on crime, and like, oh, he's pro riot and pro looting, and I mean, like, that's so ridiculous because like the crime bill, just as an example, like he doesn't really have to give into that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, if anything, the Democrats, more progressive folks like you and I are actually pissed at him because he's too tough on crime, quote
yeah,
unquote. So yeah, some of the framing from the Republicans is just absurd and not grounded in reality, and the Democrats tend to give into that. I have seen, not always consistently, but I have seen more of a transition from Biden, and especially his campaign chairwoman. I cannot remember her name, but she's really, really good. Where they don't buy into that. Like Biden was asked about something about the troops, Trump's comment on the troops, and he's like, motherfucker, I got the list of all the soldiers that have died. I keep this shit on me because I know what's going on. My kids were in there. And like, he wouldn't get baited by that question. And I hope they keep that up because they can't get into the Republican framing.
Also, a few people on the left have been theorizing, and this is not necessarily like trying to like smear Joe Biden or anything. A lot of people are theorizing that he is on some kind of upper, because like if you've seen like past debates, he is clearly slow. He's not all there. There was like, I remember like there was that moment in which he said the only African American woman to be elected to the Senate endorsed me, and then Kamala Harris was like, the other one didn't, or like look, the other one's right over here.
Yeah.
And like I remember, like he's clearly not as quick now as he was in those debates, like against Paul Ryan and Sarah Palin, which he absolutely crushed them, right? But like if you look at like his DNC speech as well as like the debate with Bernie, I mean, like you, like again, like disagree with his policies or agree with his policies all you want in those particular scenarios. Like he clearly is much more present. He's much more there. And like as in the case with most people who might be suffering from some form or another of dementia, he is much more there earlier in the day rather than at night. Like I've seen that with like my grandmother, who is
Oh yeah.
she's definitely slipping just a little bit. Like we try to visit her earlier in the day, but she's definitely like more there.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. My mom went to visit my grandma. Actually, recently passed away from dementia, and she's kind of the same, like we're describing. Better in the day, tougher at night. Not always there. I mean, I don't know. People say that about Biden. Personally, I don't see that because I remember back in 2008 when his biggest problem was that he was a goddamn gaffe machine, and he still is to this day. So I personally don't see much difference from back then versus other than he's 12 years older. Of course, I'll give you that. I personally don't see it. I just know that was always my biggest concern, was that he was a gaffe machine. And personally, I think he could just be more focused. Now that, there were like, 20 people running in the Democratic primary? And Bernie, of course, is going to outclass just about anybody on the debate stage because he's incredibly and so full of energy. So I just think he could just be more focused, and especially with this stuff about veterans. His son was a veteran. I think he's just, got his, I don't know if he's Irish, but the term is gets his Irish up, and he's ready to battle. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, the gaffing has always been a problem, but like, I guess like, the Kamala Harris example was not really an example of him being slow. That is definitely more of a gaff, and that's nothing new. But like if you look at a lot of his like more recent stuff, like I mean, like, it's not so much of like what he says, it's like how he's saying it. Like he's definitely slower at the very least. And I don't blame him. He's old, but like for some reason, like he does seem older than Bernie, oddly. But like Bernie's like a couple years older than him.
Well, Bernie is just so vivacious. He just has such incredible energy and passion. I mean, the same shit he's been saying today is what he's been saying for near the last 30 years for folks like you and I. And I just think that when you have that kind of determination and perspective on life, it's really kind of hard to lose your energy because you know what people are going through and you're willing to keep going.
Yeah. And, you know, and another thing that I think has been a real accomplishment of the Bernie campaign, even though he didn't win, is that he has won people over on the policy. Like he has won Democratic voters on the policy. Biden was just able to beat him because they were under this impression that Biden is the most electable, and I have my own problems with that.
Yeah,
argument,
whatever that means.
Yeah, but that's how he won. Most people just thought he's the more electable candidate. And I think also, and I wanted to talk about this as well, this really translates well into like when you think about how Ed Markey was able to beat Joe Kennedy last week. And, you know, it was like Ed Markey, he's definitely not like, he's not a Bernie Sanders. He has his own problems policy-wise. Like he voted for the Iraq War, he voted for NAFTA, a number of different things. But he has been very consistently progressive with climate change. Like he co-sponsored his own Green New Deal in the Senate, and he's also one of the first co-sponsors for Medicare for All, I believe.
I was just going to say that, yeah.
Yeah. And then like Joe Kennedy, he signed on to these policies as of, like very recently, but he was his campaign was not so much centered on policy so much as it was centered on his name. Like, you know, he's a Kennedy in Massachusetts, and he's part of that political dynasty. And he was definitely more close to the center. And then on top of that, you know, Nancy Pelosi endorsed him. And then, you know, and you know, Kennedy, even though he was the challenger, had an early lead on Ed Markey.
Oh, did he? Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah. Like, and, you know, him being a Kennedy automatically put him into that position.
Yeah.
But, you know, despite, you know, the Pelosi endorsement, like pretty much the whole establishment going behind him, even some like, you know, hardline progressives like Pramila Jayapal and Mark Buchanan, like endorsing him. And I don't hold that against them too much because I really care more about how they vote in Congress. But, you know, but despite all that, Ed Markey beat him in a landslide. And and there was a Politico reporter, I think his name is Alex Thompson, he tweeted out, you know, like this really lays out what incumbents need to do from now on. They need to support the Green New Deal, they need to support Medicare for All, they need to form policy alliances with AOC. And, you know, and, you know, with that, it's like the progressives have already kind of won in a way, you know.
Yeah.
And it, like, you know, like we did it, you know, it's like, you know, when, you know, someone who's only been there for 2 years has like more people power than like the speaker, then it shows, you know, like wow, like we're really going to get there. And and like I can't wait for like to see how many more gains we're going to make in 2022. Like 2020 has been like, despite the Bernie loss, for progressives overall, we have like so many different new characters going into Congress, like Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, Mondaire Jones, like those are the ones who are like definitely going to be in Congress because they're in blue districts. But we're also looking at like maybe like Paula Jean Swearingen, who's won her primary to challenge the Republican incumbent senator in West Virginia. And I'm really gonna pay close attention to that race because I want that to prove to the more centrist Democrats that it is possible to be like a hardline progressive and win in what is typically, you know, known as like a red state. You don't have to be a right-wing Democrat like Joe Manchin to run in those states.
Fuck him. Fuck that guy.
Fuck Joe Manchin.
Seriously.
Like yeah, he was asked like in the primary, like, would you vote for Bernie if he was the primary challenge? Like if he was like the primary winner? And he said, no, I'm not gonna vote for Bernie. But,
just put on your MAGA hat, Joe.
Yeah. And, you know, he voted for Kavanaugh, and then like there was that.
Didn't he got on a plane. He got on Air Force One with Trump, and they were all chumming it up over like cheeseburgers and shit. Remember that? That was in 2018, I think, when he was up for
that.
Yeah, he was up for re-election. That's why he got on the plane with them. And didn't he go to a MAGA rally? I think he did, right?
I think the person at a MAGA rally, like from West Virginia, was like the governor, Jim Justice, who like that night transitioned, like he changed his party registration from Democrat to Republican.
I know there was that. I might be misremembering, but I know that Joe Manchin got it, like, was on Air Force One, chumming it up with Trump like a little fucking sellout that he is. But what you're mentioning about the progressive movement is Bernie really spearheaded the movement, where it's really tough because he was at the top of the ticket, but there just wasn't a lot of down ballot support. And now post 2018 especially, we're seeing so much more of that. We're seeing progressives win in a lot of places. Yeah. So when you can build that coalition within the actual Congress, he's going to have a lot more support. And I'm really, like you're saying, I'm really looking forward to seeing how much more we can push things to the left.
Yeah. And I've described this both on the podcast and on Twitter numerous times. I feel more comfortable voting for Biden now, knowing that we are going to have this bigger progressive coalition going into 2021. Like before the Black Lives Matter thing like hit the fan, I was like still considering like I might vote Green Party, which I know you've spoken very.
I was so pissed. Yeah, we had words on that.
Yeah. I don't know if we have words specifically on this. I don't know, but like I know, but you've been speaking out against Green Party voters on Twitter, but like,
right.
I don't know, but yeah, after like especially at the New York primaries with like the victories of Jamal Bowman and Mondaire Jones, I feel more comfortable knowing that we're going to have this progressive coalition that could potentially bully Joe Biden into submission, and I have no problem using that term bully because we might have to get dirty if we want to get Joe Biden to do what we want.
Well, also with those folks, Congress writes the bills, right? So if you have a large faction within the House of Representatives and the Senate, they can pass these progressive deals, and I don't foresee Biden being able to veto that kind of shit from his own party, especially the progressive wing. So you're absolutely right. The more you can get those folks up there, the more you can say, hey, Joe, this is the agenda, pass it, or, I don't know how you're going to win re-election.
Yeah. Or he said he's going to step down after one term. Because,
did he? Oh, I didn't know it.
He said that early on in the primary because I assumed he was trying to get in with the kids or whatever. I won't be as bad because you won't have to live with me for that much longer. But with that in mind, I don't know if it's going to be Kamala Harris that automatically becomes the incumbent or it's just going to be a normal primary.
That's a good question.
She's basically either way, if it's not, she's not gonna officially be the incumbent. She's gonna be treated like one since she is the vice president.
I would foresee her being treated as the incumbent, she would effectively be the first woman of color to ever run for the presidency. It would be not a very good look for someone to run against that, given the policy, the politics of it, and also depending on how successful Biden's 4 years are. So me personally, if you've got Kamala Harris running and then someone like de Blasio or Bloomberg running again, come on, that's just not good optics, and it's also not good policy because it's fucking de Blasio and Bloomberg, but also there's that. Come on. Give the people of color, just fucking let them win, give them something.
I think, yeah. On top of that, the policy, I think, matters more than representation, even though representation absolutely does.
Oh,
matter.
Sure. But, yeah. Like you're saying, but keep in mind, Kamala did co-sponsor she actually sponsored, I think, the Medicare for All a few years ago. So,
she was the first co-sponsor, but then after that first debate in which she talked about that, she was at a private fundraiser at the Hamptons, and she was saying, "Yeah, I'm not so sure about that Medicare for All bill." But if I want to see a primary challenger against Kamala Harris come 2024, I would want a very strong progressive, someone who's obviously more progressive than Kamala Harris.
Sure.
But I want it to be a woman of color, so the establishment can't whip out that card racism, you're running against a woman of color, racism, and they're gonna ignore the policy altogether. That's why AOC I think is going to be old enough to run.
I was just going to say that, yeah.
And one person who was Bernie's national co-chair, she was on TYT talking about it. former Ohio State Senator Nina Turner. I really
Oh,
want her
yeah.
to run. I mean, like, I don't know. She's just the highest office she held was state senator, so I don't know about like the optics, but like she is like there's some people in the Bernie base who love her more than Bernie, so she's automatically going to have that base. Like she's very well known amongst the progressive community, so like she will already have like that grassroots support automatically picked up from
Right.
both of the Bernie campaigns, and so like I could definitely see her potential like from an electoral standpoint. I could see her potentially winning. I don't know like how well like her current experience is going to translate into her like maybe being president. You know, in the hypothetical situation when she is president. So like
I think she'll have plenty of experience. I mean, she's been attorney general. She was a junior senator from California. You know, she'll be vice president for 4 years. She'll know plenty about legislating, about navigating the government bureaucracy, and she'll actually have been inside the Oval Office and know the day-to-day operations. So I don't think experience will be an issue for her, but like you're saying,
well, I was talking about Nina Turner, not
fuck.
But like like the things you're saying about Kamala Harris, like she has plenty of experience by now compared to Nina Turner.
Yeah, but the policy, like you're saying, is also going to be important. What I'm curious about is, let's say in 2024 we do get the Green New Deal, we do pass this new universal healthcare package, a $15 minimum wage. Wondering what the next, I guess it'd probably be more severe climate policies, because I mean shit is hitting the fan out here in California, and I'm sure it'll hit everywhere else too. So
yeah, like the wildfires. You guys get a whole bunch of those every summer.
But it's getting worse every year, you know, and the fire season is longer and it's more severe, which is everything that climate scientists were telling us would happen. But anyways, yeah, for 2024, I mean, obviously no one can see the future, but I'm really curious as to what the progressive policy agenda will be at that point. Yeah. What do you think it'll be?
Well, like those are like very basic things, like Medicare for all, Green New Deal, like $15 minimum wage. Those are all things like progressive voters kind of have like on their litmus test of Democrats.
Right.
Like I'm not gonna vote for you unless you support like one or two of like my top 5 issues, and like those issues are typically on there.
So what are your top 5s? You got Green New Deal, Medicare for all, 15 minimum wage, right? Are those 3 or 5, or just what in general?
So like I have 6. So like it's Medicare for all, Green New Deal, free college, $15 minimum wage, end the wars, and what was that in this? UBI. I would support a UBI.
Oh, you're into UBI. Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I wasn't until very recently. I think at the very least, if there's a time for UBI, it would be now.
Yeah.
It
would be.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I applaud Kamala Harris for. She's been working with, or like she had worked at one point with Bernie Sanders and Ed Markey to try to get like a $2,000 a month, what's the term for it? Like aid package, you know.
Right. Well, people keep saying the $2,000 a month package, but the thing that I want is more of the extension of what we were having, the $600 a month, because that unemployment benefit was incredible. It lifted so many people out of poverty, and they finally got to experience what it's like to, hey, I can actually get ahead of my bills. Because $2,000
like it helped you, right? Like,
fuck yeah, you know, because I lost my job being in the hotel business, and a lot of other people in hotels got it that, you know, are minimum wage workers or tipped workers that, you know, don't get a lot of tips because they don't work properties where you get, you know, people tip. And it really changed a lot of folks' perspective, where it's like, oh, I don't have to live in debt all my life. I can actually get ahead of some of my bills. So $2,000 a month really isn't much, because you're looking, what folks were getting was about $1,000 a week, which is $4,000 a month. So I would be more in favor of, and I know you and I differ on this, but with Nancy Pelosi's bill that she passed, the CARES Act, that's what I want to see passed more than something different for $2,000 a month, because that's $2,000 a month is more or less just a little above minimum wage.
That was one of the good things about the CARES Act. What I didn't like about the CARES Act is it put more emphasis on bailing out like the bigger companies, because like we're still kind of running on that economic theory that like we have to bail out the American people from the top down rather than the bottom up. And that was like our approach with the recession, and then like it's very like that very like trickle down esque approach that I have a problem with.
Yeah, and with the CARES Act, they wanted to extend more of the PPP, the loans for businesses so they could pay their workers back. But as we're seeing, they're not doing that. They're just funding themselves and their golden fucking parachutes. So I'm with you to a point on that because that's what they're going to do, right? That's what the business class is always going to do, is they're going to find a way to enrich themselves. What I would say, though, is that I think in an administration that's accountable, that function would actually work, because these people doing that would be caught and held accountable. And the funds would actually be going from my employer to me, or from my friend's employer to them. But yeah, right now, that's just not feasible. They wanted oversight. And of course, Trump is like, oh, you want oversight? Okay, here's your oversight. Like, didn't fucking happen. I think I broke that. So,
what was it you
just the TV. No, it didn't break. Okay, just the TV remote. Just made a lot of noise. So, but yeah, that certainly is not something that, what it's included is a caveat to get Republicans on board. But again, why? They're going to vote against the goddamn thing. So
they voted against, like every single Republican voted against Obamacare, which is an individual mandate system, which was a concept hatched by the Heritage Foundation. It is, I mean, like, not to say like it didn't improve things, but overall it is a right-wing healthcare reform.
Yeah, Romney Care, it was modeled right off of that, more or less.
Yeah, but yeah, like, and that's another thing, like the Democrats' definition of compromise is compromise our values now, maybe we'll get something out of it later.
Yeah. Yep.
And like that just leads to the political Overton window in Congress being shifted further and further to the right, because like in Europe, Bernie is a moderate. Like Elizabeth Warren is probably a conservative even, but like they have they like to call him far left. Even like I said, he's a moderate on the international scale. Jeremy Corbyn, who was party leadership in the Labour Party for a long time, he's mainstream party leadership. Like he's further to the left than Bernie Sanders. He openly identifies as a democratic socialist. And Bernie isn't even like a democratic socialist. He's a social democrat in reality. Democratic socialist is definitely like more of a post-capitalist ideology, whereas social democrat is like a mix between socialism and capitalism. Like you take like the good points about both of those systems.
Yeah, and that's what I really enjoy so much about the way AOC and Bernie handle their political negotiations, because Bernie has such a long history in community organizing and labor organizing, so he understands that you can't just compromise what you're fighting for in the hopes of something down the road, because most of the people that you're bargaining against are folks that are not acting in good faith and don't have your best interests in mind, which is everything that the Republicans are. So he will compromise on certain things so that he can get more of what he needs, right? And I don't know AOC. I mean, I know she I need to do more research on her, but I know she was a bartender, so I don't know her experience in labor organizing. But she does the same thing where she frames the conversation around what she needs and doesn't think about the future of like, okay, I'm going to get this as goodwill. No, fuck that. You're not going to get goodwill from these folks. You need to get what will help you and your constituents now.
Yeah. And we've seen that in recent years, like with Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is not incapable of working with Republicans. He worked with, he famously worked with Mike Lee from Utah on a bill that would end our complicity in Saudi Arabia's genocide in Yemen. And and that's like the kind of compromise I'd like to see, where like we really work on the things that we do agree on, rather than like, oh, let's take these different points of view, let's try to find like a halfway point between those things, because like sometimes like it's like the halfway point between common sense and nonsense. That's like the way I see it.
Term. Yeah.
I stole that from John Oliver. It was a segment about it was a segment about vaccines. Like let's try to find a middle ground between the anti-vaxxer movement and the people who want vaccines. So that's where I got it. But like that's the kind of compromise, like that's the kind of bipartisanship I want to see. I think people over-romanticize bipartisanship way too much because, like, oftentimes when there is bipartisanship, we get the wrong things out of it because most of these politicians on both sides are bought out by corporations. You know, what do we get out of normal bipartisanship? We get like the USMCA. That was passed bipartisanly. You know, the 10% cut to the military budget that was voted against bipartisanly. Like Kamala Harris voted against it, and like that, and that's just a couple of things, you know. And it's like, yeah, that, like the kind of thing with like Mike Lee and Bernie Sanders. That's definitely the kind of bipartisanship I want to see.
Yeah. Well, the bipartisanship that's romanticized, like you're talking about, is the good old days where you know, where you could compromise with folks in more or less good faith, and that all pretty much ended post Gingrich, where the Republicans are just waiting for you to give them something that they want so they can backstab you in the next election. So yeah, there is certainly much more romanticized about bipartisanship, but you got to understand the Republican Party of today has more interest in furthering Trump and Russia's agenda than they do in the American way. So yeah, this bipartisan fixation needs to go the way of the dodo.
Yeah, like, and like the bipartisan, like when I'm talking about like the people who like are romanticizing bipartisanship, it's more like the pundits.
Yeah,
I think it was Kyle Kulinski tweeted, it's like, you know, Republicans say like, fuck you, we're gonna bury you, dance on your grave, and then Democrats are like, I'd like to work with you sometime.
It's so goddamn true. It's so goddamn true, especially ever since Obama. You know, that was their whole thing. I mean, Mitch McConnell, when we were in the midst of the worst economic recession in almost 100 years, Mitch McConnell says, I'm going to make you a one-term president. That's my agenda for the rest of
that was his number one priority. Great impression, by the way.
Thank you. I like doing the McConnell. It's up.
You got to have the lips, and you got to have a little bit of the turkey neck, and then you got to get the eyes.
Yeah, it's really good, really good.
But, you can't see it as much as I haven't shaved.
Yeah. I like the beard.
Oh, thanks. I do too. It's got like the, what was that guy in Training Day?
I don't know. I haven't seen that movie.
No, because it was Denzel and Ethan Hawke. Got the Ethan Hawke one.
Like, you know, the two actors from Magnificent Seven.
Mm-hmm. Was Ethan Hawke in Magnificent Seven?
Yeah, he was like a former Confederate soldier.
Oh, I didn't know that shit.
You know, and then like Denzel Washington was also like a former, like he was a bounty hunter, but he fought for the Union in the Civil War. But yeah, and we're also seeing like that kind of like really misplaced partisan priority now. You know, like, and yeah, like Trump, and this really digs into like what is so bad about like the Trump campaign now, because like back in 2016, as awful as like, you know, like this, like the detailed substance was with his campaign, overall it was filled with like populist slogans that people like all across the working class, left or right, could agree with, like drain the swamp. Like that's very general. A lot of people could agree with that, you know, but like he was able to have that populist pro-working class appeal that Hillary Clinton just couldn't have if she tried. And then like now he's focusing on just like culture war bullshit. You know, like, I mean, like, obviously, like, you know, having seen this debate up close and personal, you know, like, I'm for, like, tearing down Confederate statues. You know, like I said, like, Charlottesville is, like, where it started. And, like on it, like, that's where, like, that's what kind of, like, launched it into the national conversation. And, you know, that's where I'm from. And, like, I'm for that, but like that needs to, like, compared to some of the other things that we can really do for criminal justice, and as well as like some of the other issues that we're facing now, like that really needs to kind of take a back seat as far as like the most important things that we talk about. And that's what Donald Trump's been hammering down constantly. Like, oh, they want to tear down the statues, they want to tear down history. And, you know, meanwhile, like Biden is talking about what he would do with COVID. And like, this is probably like the most substantive he's ever been when it comes to policy. And you know, and that's what Americans care about. They care about like getting to the other end of the tunnel with this COVID thing, and Trump's just talking about, oh, they want to get rid of statues. You know, and you know, it's just like really bad misplaced priorities. And yeah, and the same thing goes with like how they're like putting abortion at the forefront of like the RNC. Like Trump is like the most pro-life
Oh
president.
God, did you watch it?
Yeah, me and my fellow co-hosts were we watched the first 3 nights in full because but the last one we were just kind of drained. We were expecting to be more entertained, but yeah,
So you saw the Rita Repulsa, after 10,000 years I'm free, Kimberly Guilfoyle thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they kept on focusing on these like culture war stuff that Americans really just don't care about right now. And yeah, like talk more about what you're going to do with COVID. And then when they were talking about COVID, they were talking about, oh, we've recovered, we're better than ever already. And then when you were talking about the trade deals in 2016, like, oh, the Democrats voted for these trade deals, these have really screwed you over. They're like, you're right, they have. But like when you're saying, COVID, we're better, we're back better than ever after COVID. A lot of people are like, no, we're not. They look around the house that they're not in,
Yeah, I know. They're like, we've recovered from COVID. Everything's fine. What? I'm still sick.
Yeah, exactly.
You can kind of see through the con at that point.
Yeah, not to mention the economic crisis that is coming from COVID. But I won't give I try to give Trump credit where it is due, and very few times it is. But the one thing he did do recently that I thought was pretty good was that he did put a halt on the evictions, not because of economic reasons, but for health reasons. Like the CDC said, for health concerns, we're going to put a pause on the evictions, and he did, and he approved that. So I will give him slight credit with that.
Are you talking about his executive order, right?
I think it was it was an executive order he did last week.
Yes. Wait, last week? No, because was that the same executive order where he was going to give $300 to everybody in the state? Are you talking about that executive order or something different?
That was another one from a month or so ago. But last week he did say let's put a pause to the evictions. It's not enough because it's basically just saying we'll do this later, and we don't want that kind of eviction crisis on our hands.
Yeah, because I know the one he did back then where it's also we can give you $300 and the states can pitch in for 100. Okay, 100. Do I hear 200? 200, 200, 300, 400? So where he was doing that thing, that executive order, he doesn't actually have the power to halt the evictions, but what he did was it was just propaganda bullshit. He just said, okay, so listen, Health and Human Services, HUD, I want you guys to consider halting evictions. You don't have to. Okay, but I want you to consider. So it was propaganda bullshit. I didn't hear about this other one you're describing, but I'm going to check that out. But I would be very surprised if it's any different.
Yeah. Or he actually, it was more or less just on the CDC's recommendation. I think this was definitely more rather than just saying, okay, I recommend.
So it's a toothless thing. It's like being censored. It doesn't have any legal power.
And this pissed me off, actually, when Nancy Pelosi was responding to that executive order from a month or so ago, she rather than responding to the policy substance of the executive order, she just said to point out, oh, you can't do this without congressional approval.
Yeah, they didn't have good messaging after that. I remember I was so frustrated. It's guys, this is your opportunity. How can you Yeah. I can't even. I'm getting so pissed off just remembering it.
Yeah. The corporate Democrats spent more effort trying to get rid of Bernie Sanders than they have with Trump. They keep on botching their response to Trump, and it's just unforgivable that they lost to Trump in 2016, the most beatable candidate, and then but yeah,
you just did the same thing. We were just oh, I need to get a pillow and scream into it,
Yeah. And then, and also with the impeachment thing, obviously he's done impeachable things, but they went after him on probably the weakest thing. If you want to talk about collusion, collusion, don't talk about necessarily what he did with Russia, because I think the Mueller report said they wanted to collude, but they weren't able to. So they didn't actually collude. But if you want to go after actual real collusion, go after his collusion with Saudi Arabia, for Christ's sake. Do that. like, you know, Saudi Arabia funneled him, you know, like a whole shit ton of money through his hotels that he still owns in DC.
Yeah, or over the emoluments clause or any of
Yeah.
the other 20 fucking crimes that he breaks daily. Yeah,
like,
but the obstruction of justice charges
yeah,
were
like,
solid. And with all due respect,
Yeah.
the stuff on Ukraine was solid. All of that stuff was,
Yeah.
like, if that was a criminal case, he would have been
Yeah.
in jail.
He
But
definitely did that shit, but it was like it was because like the reason why like I really want to point out like, you know, go after him for like war crimes or collusion with Saudi Arabia, because those are things that Republicans can actually get behind. Like some Republicans, like the paleo conservative kind, like Rand Paul and and Mike Lee, like the more paleo conservative types. Whereas like this was more like they made this into like, because it was like Joe Biden versus Trump, it automatically became that strictly partisan issue rather than focusing on like he actually did something wrong.
Yeah.
Like
I mean that's what I mean? Yeah, that's a really interesting distinction, because like you said, this I didn't even think about it like that at all, but it really was like a Biden versus Trump, because Trump's whole treason was trying to fuck over Biden. So it definitely did draw the partisan battle lines. The fact is, though, that the Republican Party is just in Trump and Putin's pocket, and nothing. I mean, he's not joking when he said he could shoot somebody in Fifth Avenue and not lose a single vote, and that vote would include impeachment hearings. He would always be acquitted by Republicans, because that is just, I mean, that's how far down the shit QAnon terrorist hole that they've gone. That is a very good distinction, but just no matter what, they're gonna acquit him, and they're gonna cup his balls as they do it.
Yeah. But I don't know, like, and I don't know, like Nancy Pelosi, I feel like had a feeling that, you know, he wasn't going to be removed. So like, I wonder why she did it anyway.
It was the right thing to do. I got to jump in on that, because I was hounding on fucking Pelosi to bring impeachment charges long before this shit. And I was so pissed she waited so long. But then once impeachment hearings did come up, I got to say she really handled it well. Nadler handled it well. Schiff kicked ass. They finally did a good job on that.
More or less. Like I can find some agreement with you on that.
Yeah, and a lot of people say the same thing, like, why do it if he's just going to get off? Because that is the right thing to do. Like, what did Vindman say? He said, here, right matters, you know? And that's, you know, we've got to, yes, there is a time to consider politics, but this is so much bigger than just the politics of, oh, well, he'll just get off. No, this is a time to go in the history books and saying, we did the right thing.
Yeah. And then, like, yeah, like, that's true. But then I would, like, talk about, like, the political aspect of it. Because, like, I mean, we all knew he wasn't going to get removed. Sure. And, like, if you look back at, like, the Clinton impeachment trial, and this was absolutely true with Trump. In fact, like, if it wasn't for COVID, I would say that Joe Biden would lose, to be honest. But, he experienced, like, that post-acquittal bump. Because, like the same as like Clinton did, and like that's what we were all like, people on the left were like really screaming about, like, if you're gonna if you're gonna impeach it for something, do something that on the surface seems less partisan. And then like, so like if he does get away with it, like if you impeach him on something and you really focus on the substance of it, like it, like, you know, it really seems like, you know, like Trump actually got away with murder rather than, like, you know, actually like just being acquitted of a crime he didn't commit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and like I said, that's a really good distinction where you did draw the partisan battle lines. But the issue at hand of what he did was not a partisan issue. It was full-on treason. And that's just the thing where I'll give them kudos that once they moved, they did the right thing.
Yeah. One thing Trump was actually, like, he was able to do this with Pussygate as well. Like he was able to flip it back on them. That's what some people have called it before.
Are you talking about the Grab 'em by the Pussy tapes, the Access Hollywood? Oh, yeah. God, Pussygate. I didn't even know that. Oh, my God. So sorry, go ahead. What were you saying? What happened?
He was able to bounce back from that in a way like he did with the Access Hollywood tape. Because with the Access Hollywood tape, it was like right before a presidential debate. and he brought Clinton's accusers and put him like, you know, like gave him seats at the event and said, what I said was words, what Bill Clinton did was actions. Here are some of his accusers. He was able to flip it back on them
Yes, it was.
quite geniusly. And then he was able to flip it back on them with this. And it's like, it wasn't about going after Biden. It was about going after corruption. I mean, like, he doesn't really have any high ground on that front, but he was able to really sell that with his supporters to the point where, like, yeah, like, oh, like, they're less talking about, like, what Donald Trump did and more talking about so much, like, what Hunter Biden and Joe Biden were doing in Ukraine. In which, to be honest, yeah, like, there's no reason why Hunter Biden should have been on that, like, been on the board of that company. Like, and, yeah. I mean, like, when it gets to the substance of what Joe Biden, and his family were doing in Ukraine, that's not good in itself. So, like, they were able to flip it back on them in that way. Like, you know what I mean?
Well, that's just Trump's go-to reflex. He always projects. He always attacks. You know, he never because he's a narcissist. He never actually takes a moment to say, okay, maybe this was something that I shouldn't have done. And with the Access Hollywood tapes, that also, within hours of that tape dropping, Roger Stone knew about information that Russia had on Hillary, and that's when they dumped all the WikiLeaks. And that, I promise you, having been going door to door with folks, that was much more damaging to Hillary than Bill Clinton's shit. And Bill Clinton, like, he needs to just go away, with all due respect. That shit should not have reflected on him.
Need to go away.
What's that?
I think the Clintons in general just need to go away. They're
what?
Yeah, Bill Clinton is just terrible. Hillary Clinton's damaged goods, in addition to just being pretty terrible on the policy substance, like, in general. Like,
well,
yeah.
Bill is, like I said, Bill has fucked up so much with all that he did to women back in the day, and like, just, dude,
And the Epstein
you had
shit
your
isn't
time.
helping either.
What's that?
The Epstein shit isn't helping either.
There are very legitimate questions as why the hell his names are on those flight logs, and he needs to be able to explain that, and there needs to be a criminal investigation if he can. Now, he needs to go away, but what he did should not reflect on Hillary, okay?
That is absolutely true.
Bullshit of the way that boomerang back to her. Like, how does she can't control that she can't control that the guy is a fucking little horny old toad. Like, she can't do anything about that.
Yeah, I mean, like, like, as much as I really dislike Hillary Clinton for my own left-wing reasons, not like none of my criticisms of Hillary Clinton come from the right. They never come from the right. It's always from the left. It's like, I never really understood why that was never an actual, like, legitimate claim against Hillary Clinton, because, like, it's not her, it's her husband. You know, like, I was talking to someone who was having this debate, like, who was talking about a debate she had with someone, like, oh, who would you rather have play with your children in a sandbox or whatever, Bill Clinton or Trump? Like, last I checked, Bill Clinton isn't running for president, and I wouldn't want either of them to play with my kids.
I wouldn't either, with all due respect. You know, Bill hasn't been sued in a court of law for raping a 13-year-old girl at Epstein's party. You know, Bill wasn't bragging on tape about how much he would love to date his teenage daughter, right? Bill wasn't walking in on teenage girls at beauty pageants. So Bill may have his problems with adult women, and he is a despicable person for that. But again, big distinction, personally.
Yeah, and also, like, going back to, like, the Epstein shit, the right rightfully goes after Bill Clinton for his connections with Jeffrey Epstein, but they conveniently leave out Trump.
Yeah, I know. Why would that be, right?
Yeah, and the same thing goes with, like, you know, like the liberal pundits on MSNBC. They go after Trump rightfully, but they leave out Bill Clinton. So, like, there is that element of just, like, partisan hackery in cable news in general.
But again, there's no evidence of wrongdoing on Bill Clinton's part on Epstein's island. There are legitimate claims that Trump had extremely close ties to Jeffrey Epstein, that he raped a 13-year-old girl at one of his parties, that he and Ghislaine Maxwell, I mean, the women that Maxwell got for Epstein came out of Mar-a-Lago. Is that a coincidence? No. See, these are all legitimate questions. Now, a guy boarding a flight with Epstein is not good and definitely deserves questions, but there are much more legitimate answers to that than being on that plane, supplying girls from Mar-a-Lago, being accused of raping a teenager at Epstein's party, and also like having this obsession with teenage girls in general, which is what Trump has in his own words. So there are very big distinctions in those.
Yeah. It wasn't like Bill Clinton, like there was a whole bunch of like Maxwell documents that were released back in July, and like among them, you know, it was like Alan Dershowitz, like was also implicated in this.
Yeah, and Prince, what's his name over in England? Prince
Prince Andrew.
Andrew, yes.
Yeah, George is the like I think he's 7. Yeah. But like I think Bill Clinton was also on that list too. I think I can look that up, but I think
he was. Yeah. So what happened was one of Ghislaine Maxwell's girls, or no, I think it was actually Ghislaine Maxwell herself, made a joke in regards to Bill Clinton, like, oh, get Bill in to ask about this, or something to that effect. And again, obviously not good, and he needs to answer for that.
Yeah.
And if he can't, fucking send in the feds. But again, hugely different overlaps there.
That's why I really think that it needs to be progressive to investigate this, because we don't like the Clintons or the Trumps. Like, so we can be more objective, I guess.
Well, but hold on now. Now you're bringing up partisanship in terms of criminal investigations.
Yeah,
like the
that was
whole
more
point.
that was more of a joke, but I mean,
okay.
Like,
I don't know how I am the comedian, and I can never tell when people are joking and serious. Like, seriously, my girlfriend will make a joke, and I was like, now, honey, come on. We can't actually go to the grocery store, go to Costco at midnight. They're closed. I was kidding, James.
Well, you're married now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, congrats on that.
We had to put the ceremony and everything off until next year, obviously, because of the virus and whatnot.
But like, you went to the courthouse, you got the documents and everything, right?
We did, yep, and we put in her paperwork for USCIS, so we got that taken care of. And it sucks because I have to cut them a check, which is not a big deal, but that check I have to have like a hanging balance in my checking account, so I have to constantly be making sure that money is in there because they can cash the check at any time. You know, they're like some kind of fucking. They're like the Santa Claus of your money, except they're there to take it instead of give it. They can just come at any time, and you can't blink on Christmas Eve. Otherwise, Santa will come in, drop the Christmas presents, and then you're gone. Like, that's how they are.
Yeah. Well, like, here's something we can talk about. You mentioned WikiLeaks.
I got to jump in, though, because I got to run, and I got time for, like, one more thing, and then I got to get going. Sorry.
All right. No problem. But, like, this has been a pleasure so far, and I hope, like, maybe, like, someday soon we can do it again, because I really love talking to you. Like, not just being restricted to Twitter and, like, waiting for, like, them to answer back. Like, okay.
Totally. I'm down, mate. I'm down.
Yeah. This was big. It wasn't really, I mean, like, it was big amongst, like, progressives, I guess, because, like, we've been really talking about, you know, whistleblowers in general, and, like, there's a whole conversation around whistleblowers that, you know, that came up with the Trump impeachment, because it was a whistleblower who, you know, initially made the claim, yeah, like, Trump was trying to cut a deal with Ukraine. But, like, it was a court decision that decided that what Edward Snowden exposed was, in fact, illegal. So that makes Edward Snowden fit perfectly the definition of a whistleblower, and, like, it's pretty much undisputed that, like, he is a whistleblower, and, like, he's not a traitor. So I don't know, like, what is your opinion on that? Like, I think he should be pardoned.
So I'm not, unfortunately, the Snowden thing is not something that I am hugely focused on. I can tell you the perspective of national security folks that I follow and listen to very closely. Their perspective is that if he wanted to be a legitimate whistleblower, there were avenues for him to do so, and he actively chose not to do it, and instead he chose to break the law and expose a lot of people that put their lives on the line for this country to expose, obviously, what's something that was very, very horrible. So that's just their perspective. Again, I'm not well versed on this issue, but obviously the fact that the court found that what he exposed to, yeah, absolutely, it was illegal, is big, and there needs to be a very big new look on what happened with him.
Yeah. Like as far as like, there are legal avenues for a whistleblower, but the kind of thing that Edward Snowden was trying to expose, I don't think the legal avenues would have allowed him to expose that, because I mean it was still like kind of considered legal in a way, and also that's definitely not the kind of thing that the U.S. government would really want to be put out there. I mean,
well, on the note of whistleblowers, though, like there is a process for it, right? Which is why I find, so I've been doing some reading on QAnon because I'm like, what in the fuck is this, right?
Yeah.
So their whole perspective is that there is someone within the deep state. Well, he's not within. Yeah, I guess he is within the deep state.
Former member of the deep state.
Yeah, working. No, he's in the government, right? He's a high-ranking official close to Trump that is working to expose the deep state. That is that the world and Hollywood specifically is run by a cabal of pedophile Satan worshipers, right? So one, it's funny that this guy, rather than taking the approach of going through whistleblowers, especially because if he's a Trump ally, he's fucking safe, right? Because Trump controls the executive branch. So he'll, if there was someone like this guy, boom, come here, give me a hug, you saved my career. Like, there would be a bromance bigger than he and Putin. So the second thing is that it's funny how there's such a focus on pedophilia when the whole story of QAnon came from 8chan, which is a white supremacist message board that posts child pornography.
You mean 4chan?
No, 8chan is where it originated from both of them, but 8chan is where it first came from, and that website
8chan is its own thing.
Correct, and that website posts child pornography. So it's kind of like saying, we're going to expose this drug deal in this drug place, but there's no drugs here. The drugs are over there. Like, it makes no fucking sense.
Yeah.
So whistleblowers, the policy there and the legal protections for them are very, very necessary. And if there was this QAnon thing that was real, that's the way to do it. Instead, he's on these message boards posting like a Batman villain, like, riddle me this. What lives in Hollywood and finds children and also goes in the forests to worship Satan? Like, it makes no fucking sense. I just had to throw that in there because I read it. Like, seriously, you got to read about this, and it's absurd. Like, how is it that they could believe that and not a virus which is literally killing their fucking neighbor? That's the hoax?
Yeah. But I will say this about the QAnon thing. I don't think it was helped by the Epstein thing, because basically the whole thing with Epstein is the Epstein documents, they're exposing people in politics and in show business who are pedophiles. Not to say they're the thing, but they're the people controlling the world or whatever.
Right.
And then also with that Jeffrey Epstein allegedly committing suicide.
I don't know.
Like, how do you fall 5 feet and break your neck,
And also, there's a testimony from a cell mate who said, they make it those cells so you literally can't kill yourself.
Yeah, and the independent autopsy said, no, this does not look like a suicide. This looks like a homicide.
Yeah, and then I remember after Jeffrey Epstein died, there was this hashtag that says Jeff Epstein is Q. So
oh God, they're so pathetically insane.
I think that's what helped it really launch into the national spotlight, to the point where we're gonna have QAnon conspiracy theorists in Congress come next year.
Oh, I don't even want to think about it.
Yeah.
All right, on that nightmare scenario, I've got to get running.
All right. Check out our video of this podcast when we're talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene. We were reading an NPR article about it and just having a laugh and shit. And there's also Laura Loomer in Florida.
Okay. Yeah. Tweet it to me or DM me or both. I don't care.
Yeah. All right.
But yeah, let's definitely do this again. I'm down.
Yeah. Be sure to follow James Russell on Instagram and Twitter. I think it's on Instagram it's at James Joel Russell, and then on Twitter it's at James Russell 88.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Thank you, James. This has been such a pleasure. I don't know. You're nearly twice my age. Do I call you Mr. Russell or James?
God, don't do that. Don't make me feel old. Just because I got silver hair in my beard doesn't mean you can pull the Mr. card on me.
I don't know. Like, I'm actually concerned. I was taught, like, Southerners, or like, I'm kind of Southern, but like, we're taught, like, address people who are adults as Mr. or Mrs. Or Miss.
No, I don't ascribe to that. I mean, whatever you're comfortable with, but you're just call me James. I'm fine.
All right. So, thank you, James, for stopping by. This has been a real pleasure. I hope to do it again sometime.
Me too, brother. Anytime.
All right. Have a pleasant day. Or, it's night here already, but have a pleasant evening over there.
All right. Thanks, brother. I'll talk to you later.
Talk to you later.
Bye.